Hey there, welcome back to CMTEQ channel in this tutorial on contingency analysis with DigSilent. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can run a contingency analysis with DigSilent PowerFactory. But before we do that, let's first fill up a few blanks, okay? Have you ever heard of the term contingency analysis in Power System? Well, if you haven't, or you are not too sure, or maybe you have, well, if you stay put, by the end of this tutorial, you'll know exactly what is contingency analysis in Power System and why is it important to run contingency analysis. Okay, so we're going to be asking a few critical questions related to contingency analysis. Now, this presentation is going to be very brief, so this is our basics outline here. So we're going to talk about the basics of contingency analysis, how critical they are for reliability and stability, and also the importance of contingency analysis. But we're going to do this by answering the very critical question, as I've said earlier. So what is contingency analysis? Well, this is a very crucial question. Contingency analysis basically involves studying the power system behavior when an unexpected failure occur. Like we may have a transmission line failure, basically a line outage, maybe a pylon might fall because of a storm, or a transformer failing, or maybe you may have a generator tripping. And in the case of generators tripping, we may take an example of a coal-fired power station, during the power outage here in South Africa. One of the reasons that were being advanced by the power utility was that the coal were wet, right? Now, that may be a good reason that can put a power station out of service, right? Causing an unplanned breakdown that if there were no contingency plans in places, then we will have problems, right? Because wet coal may cause a number of issues, one of which might be transportation or issues with the combustion, because wet coal make it harder to dry in the mills, which can negatively impact the combustion to basically power those steam turbines. So basically, these are some of the stuff that can happen, and if they can happen, then you need to plan in running contingency analysis. So basically, the goal here is to proactively identify weak points in your system and ensure that the system can operate effectively, reliably under these conditions. Great. So the next question that we need to answer ourselves here is, why is contingency analysis important? Well, we may have already answered this question, but let's nevertheless look into it, right? So it's important, it's basically essential for ensuring reliability of the system, because we know that continuity of supply is very important in power system for the grid. Okay, so this is important because it helps the grid operators, the one running the power system grid, to prevent cascading failures and blackout, right, which can result from an anticipated power outage that basically was not announced right in advance. So by simulating potential failures like line outage, transformer failure, generator tripping, and others, we can plan and implement corrective actions before these problems occur. So that is why it is important to run a contingency analysis. Great. Now, as we continue, now let's look at the steps that are involved in running a contingency analysis. So here we basically first define the list of possible failure scenarios, right? So when you find yourself in DigSilent PowerFactory, you will see parameter that will give you n-1 or n-2. Now in this case, if you run a n-1, you basically simulating for one item being put out of service or failing, right? For instance, you might have a transformer failing, or if you move to n-2, then you've got two items, so maybe a transformer and a power line failing at the same time. So those are possible scenarios that you can have. Then next, you basically need to simulate each one of these scenarios to basically observe the impact on your power system network. Okay, then you need to check the violations like overloading, obviously. When you've got a loss of generation or a loss of transmission line or transformer, one section of the line would immediately become overloaded. So you need to analyze that, and finally you're going to rank each scenario based on the severity of the situations, or the to prioritize a certain action, or whether you need to cut off the supply to certain residential area and release power to sectors that cannot be left without power, for example hospitals and other critical infrastructures. And after running that analysis and checking for violation, you can then rank different scenarios based on the severity of the problem on your network, and you can prioritize certain action that must be taken to prevent the situations for getting to that point. Okay, great. Now before we end this presentation, let's answer just one last question. How do you perform contingency analysis in PowerFactory? So this is what we're going to do in the second part of this tutorial, where you're basically going to go through the options and run a contingency analysis. Well, in DigSilent PowerFactory, contingency analysis is basically streamlined with automation, right? So you put in a bunch of settings and it will run the scenarios for you and ultimately give you the result. Okay, so as we know, DigSilent PowerFactory is a very powerful software, so it will simulate outage for you, identify the violation for you, like exceeding transformer ratings, overloading of transformer, or exceeding voltage drops limit, and other scenarios as well. And after running these analyses, it will then generate both a visual report and a numerical report to basically help you, the operator, the power system engineer, to quickly assess and address the issues that will arise based on the particular scenario. So that is in a nutshell what is contingency analysis and how it's done in a case of a power system network. So that is it for this tutorial. If you found it useful, please make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to CMTEQ channel. That will be highly appreciated. So in the next tutorial, we're then going to demonstrate how we can do this in DigSilent PowerFactory. Until next time, cheers.